Welcome to Off the Wall. My name is Trey. Thank you so much for joining me today. We had a great weekend of IFL football this past weekend. Round one of the playoffs is done. We had games on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So we'll talk about the teams that punched their ticket to the conference championship, and we've got our final four teams remaining. We started the season with 16, started the playoffs with 8. Now we're down to 4. So we'll talk about those winning teams. We'll talk about the games that were played this past weekend that got them there, talk about the teams that came up a little bit short, and then preview those conference championship games as well. We also have an interview with a guest. He's an ArenaBowl champion. He's a running back for the Billings Outlaws. His name is Hunter Swoboda. He was one of my favorite players to watch in the AFL, so I had a chance to chat with him about transitioning to the indoor game from the outdoor game, this year's Billings team, the ArenaBowl, and all the madness that happened with the Arena Football League this year. So I had a really great combo with him. Definitely check that out. But before we dive into any of that stuff, please give us a follow on all of our socials. It's at Off the Wall FB, F as in foot, B as in ball, Off the Wall FB. We're on Instagram, we're on X/Twitter, we're on TikTok, we're across the board. So give us a follow on each of those. Got some exciting things lined up for the off season, and we have a tremendous slate of games to go in the IFL. Only 3 games left, which is crazy to think about, but we're super excited to see how the season plays out. But give us a follow on each of those, posting all sorts of stuff, and have some great ideas for some things to do in the off season of the indoor football league and the arena football league. So give us a follow, and if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe on the video. Helps out the algorithm. We're growing slowly but surely. You've had some people from some other channels come over and say hi. The World of Football family came over and left a few comments on the last video. So what's up to Adam and Randy Snow? Appreciate you guys and having me on this past weekend. Go check out that video if you haven't already on their channel. But like and subscribe this video and the channel. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please thumbs up the episode, like the episode, and go to our podcast page and rate us 5 stars there. That helps us get to a few more ears as well. So without further ado, let's dive into the IFL. Before we dive into any of the games from this past weekend, I want to take some time to address the elephant in the room regarding the IFL, and that was the streaming situation. They partnered with Stadium Sports Network, maybe one of the two, this past weekend for the first round and second round of the IFL playoffs to be broadcast on their platforms, so it can be watched on YouTube TV, on Prime Video, on all sorts of things, and on the Stadium YouTube channel itself instead of the IFL channel. And when it was pitched and the way it was rolled out, it was like, okay, this could be really cool. It has a chance to expand the audience a little bit and maybe put the product in front of some folks that may have never seen it before and give people an opportunity to discover the IFL for the first time. And that was all great in theory, but the execution of the streams were not good. There were 4 games this past weekend. The first game, Quad City Green Bay, had audio issues all game. Second game between Massachusetts and Frisco, they had their video was very laggy and glitchy a lot of the first half and sort of figured it out in the second half. Third game between Arizona and Vegas, they didn't start on time. By the time they got the stream up and running, it was 10 minutes into the game and both teams had already scored at that point. And then the final game between San Diego and Bay Area, the stream was just very bad in the first half to the point where they had to go away from the main cam and they were just staying stationary on a cameraman that was in the end zone. And it was just a really poor viewing experience, especially for those fans that have watched the IFL all season long. And it was just a bummer. It was a bit deflating, especially this was the first round of the playoffs. We were seeing the very best teams in the league face off against one another, and it was made difficult to watch the product and enjoy the product, which is never a good thing. So it felt like the IFL streaming deal with Stadium was going to be a step forward, but it ended up being a step backwards if we're just being honest. So hopefully they get it figured out. They've already issued a statement from Commissioner Tryon about getting it figured out and apologizing for the inconveniences this past weekend, which is great. Love that. But we got to get this sorted out for the conference championship this upcoming weekend. It was just frustrating as a fan who's watched a lot of IFL games this year to see something like that happen when they are the only gig in town. The AFL wrapped up their season a few weeks back. The NAL has been wrapped up for a few weeks now. The IFL is the only gig in town right now when it comes to indoor and arena football. And they made it difficult to watch. So that was a bit of a bummer. But from the games that we were able to watch and the bits and pieces that we were able to see uninterrupted and maybe put on mute because audio levels weren't great, there was some good football played. And the first game was played on Friday night. It was between the Quad City Steamwheelers and the Green Bay Blizzard, and Green Bay won this game 34-23. So a pretty low scoring game in the IFL, but that's not a surprise when you look at how Green Bay and Quad City have played all year, especially against one another. And starting with Quad City, we talked about this way too much. And the quarterback and forth that they've done all year up to this point, they did it yet again in this one, and it didn't work here either. I found the quote, if you have two quarterbacks, you actually have none, from John Madden. You may know him as a former football coach, and I think he has a video game named after him or something like that. The inevitable happened for Quad City here with their two quarterback system, and they couldn't really get either of them going really well in this game. And that's kind of been the theme, where one of them would be solid for a half of football and then kind of start to decline. Then they'd switch to the other one, would be solid for a game and a half, then would start to decline. Then they'd switch back. So it's just frustrating to watch, because it's just like, oh my God, just stick with one. Please just pick one and stick with them. But again, they didn't get much of a boost from either quarterback here. Judd Erickson, he went 10 for 18, 81 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Mike Irwin went 4 for 10, 50 yards, no touchdowns and an interception. So nothing really standing out, especially in the playoffs, where you want to see a quarterback take over and really take his offense and take his team to the next level. And they did a pretty good job of balancing their offense to attack Green Bay's vulnerability. We've talked about this on the show as well. Green Bay's vulnerability is their run defense. You're not going to be able to pass the ball on Green Bay and beat them. You have to be able to run the ball and at least have a balanced attack. And they had 7 different players get rushing attempts in this one. But to me, they didn't feed the ball to Ed Vander, PJ Vander, nearly enough. He had 11 carries, which is a lot more than what they've done earlier in the season, but I really feel like they needed to really feed him the ball 15 plus times on the ground to really run it down Green Bay's throat and control the game a little bit more than they did. And to Quad City's credit, they were only down by 3 late in this game. So they were in it. And they were by no means, like, the final score is what, an 11-point difference. They were within 3 late in the game. So they were there. They had the opportunity to leap up and steal this one, but they just didn't take it. And they just ran into the buzzsaw that is the Green Bay Blizzard defense, especially that defense at home just seems to play on another level. But something that really frustrated me with Quad City's offense was in the fourth quarter, they were down by double digits. And they were taking their sweet, sweet time getting a play call in, getting the snap off, getting people set. You would have thought that they were the ones up by double digits, but they were down by double digits. They were down by 10, and they were just moseying down the field, taking 5-6 yards at a time, not really taking shots down the field when they needed to. Green Bay has a great pass defense, and I understand how that can seem like a juxtaposition of like, oh, well, they're not taking shots because Green Bay has a good defense. Well, it was towards the end of the fourth quarter, and they needed to do something, and they were just taking their time. And the announcers for Green Bay, they mentioned it a couple times. Quad City seems content with letting this clock go down and not worrying about the clock when they absolutely should have been worried. So it was just frustrating end for Quad City's season, where it's like, man, this team was so talented, but this 2 quarterback system ended up doing them in. And that's got to be the first thing that they get addressed heading into 2025. And for Green Bay, they ran into some difficulties of their own on offense. Quad City's defense is no joke, and they came to play. They were making life very difficult for the Blizzard. But Green Bay was able to control the pace of the game, and they avoided those backbreaking mistakes that the Steamwheelers had. Who, again, we talked about Steamwheelers having a couple of interceptions. Well, Green Bay's defense, their passing defense, really stepped up. In my opinion, the future IFL Defensive Player of the Year, Ravarius Rivers, snagged a crucial interception late in the game. He racked up 7.5 tackles, and another DB in the secondary, Sean Steele, had an identical game. He had 7 tackles, an interception, and a pass breakup that was very close to being another interception. So this defense came to play. They continued to impress and really show why they are the #1 defense in the league in many, many categories. And it wasn't the prettiest game for the offense, but quarterback Max Mailer ended up going 13 for 20 for 161 yards and 2 touchdowns. And running back EJ Burgess came up big in this one as well, scoring 2 touchdowns on the ground to help widen the gap in the second half. So Green Bay, this wasn't the prettiest game again, but they got it done. They did what they needed to do to seal the victory. And holding any team in the IFL to a total in the 20s is worth applauding. So a really awesome job by the Green Bay Blizzard defense. But next week they get an offense in the Eastern Conference Championship that seems to be turning it on at the exact right time. The next game we're going to talk about is the Massachusetts Pirates at the Frisco Fighters, and Massachusetts won this game 53-50. Heading into this game, I had some hesitations about the Pirates offense, and I let it be known on not only on this show, but on some other shows where I felt like the Pirates had arguably the most talented roster offensively in the entire league, but they just haven't been as consistent as I would like for to see out of them to confidently pick them to win as underdogs on the road when they historically are not a very good road team in the playoffs. But in this one, the offense came alive and it couldn't have happened at a better time. What better time for the offense to figure things out than the first round of the playoffs, right? So, quarterback Alejandro Benefield, he looked great in this one. He ended up going 13 for 20 for 152 yards, 5 touchdowns, and an interception. The only real blemish was a pick six right before halftime, which was just an errant throw, just poorly advised. And but the Pirates were down double digits in the fourth quarter, but they never flinched. They went out and executed and relied on their defense, which has been one of the better defenses in the entire IFL all year, to go out and make a stop. And that's what they did. Frisco's offense scored on every possession except for the final two. And those final two were the stops that Massachusetts needed to get ahead and stay ahead in this one. And then all IFL running back Jimmy Robinson had another incredible game. He just seems to do this every single week, no matter who they play, with 18 rushes for 94 yards and a touchdown. And he was able to gash Frisco's defense for some big chunks. And so his ability to take chunks on the ground with Benefield's ability to toss it up and do some play action to Jimmy, they made it so that you had to acknowledge and at least show some respect for the ground game so that those play action plays hit a little bit deeper. And wide receiver Thomas Owens, he hauled in 6 catches for 56 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Tio Redding accounted for the other 2 touchdowns from Alejandro Benefield. So this was a really impressive game from the Pirates, like I said, and just a well-deserved victory. I had my doubts, but they proved me wrong, and they were able to get back to the Eastern Conference Championship against the Green Bay Blizzard. And it's funny, the season started for Massachusetts and Green Bay in Green Bay. They played each other. Now, the final game of the Eastern Conference is going to be Massachusetts and Green Bay in Green Bay. So it's funny how that works. But Massachusetts' offense is figuring things out at the right time, and they're going to be facing a very tough defense in Green Bay. And on the other side, the playoff woes just continue for Frisco. Before the season, I compared the Frisco Fighters to the Baltimore Ravens of the NFL. Athletic MVP quarterback, great regular season team, but they just can't seem to get over the hump in the playoffs. And the same thing happened again this year. Frisco was cruising early in this one. They got a double-digit lead right before halftime, and then again at the beginning of the fourth quarter, behind 3 passing touchdowns from TJ Edwards and 2 rushing touchdowns from Meatball Martez Carter. But then something just changed. Something fell out of sync with this offense. They got the ball in the fourth quarter, but they couldn't get a first down. They went 4 and out, gave the ball right back to the Pirates. Pirates scored, cut into that lead. On the final drive of the game, Edwards was just not able to connect on some intermediate throws that would have made life a little bit easier on the next play. They were just poorly thrown passes that put them in a tougher spot than they would hope to be in. Faison McClurge, he ended up having a great game in this one, catching all 3 of TJ Edwards' touchdown passes. But as a whole, they went for it on 4th and 9 instead of trying to get the first down. They went for the touchdown, and they just couldn't connect on it. And again, Frisco just seemed to come up short for the 4th year in a row in the playoffs. They have just been an outstanding regular season team in the IFL, best regular season in record in the IFL over the past 4 years, but they don't have much to show for it in the playoffs. They haven't won an Eastern Conference championship, let alone won an IFL national championship to this point. So they're going to have to retool and redo this roster to fit with some of the league roster rules next year, as all the players on this team kind of age up and age out. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. But yeah, another season with a disappointing finish, because I'm sure the expectations were a lot higher in Frisco. But then jumping over to the West, we had the Arizona Rattlers take on the Vegas Nighthawks, and Arizona won this game 39-38. So once this stream actually got started, looking at you, Stadium, this was a pretty good first half of football. Jerome Johnson, he's threw a touchdown, ran another touchdown, passed another touchdown. So in the first half, he had two passing touchdowns and two rushing touchdowns, and it was starting to look like, oh boy, this is going to be another Jerome Johnson game. He's accounted for 7 and 8 touchdowns multiple times throughout the season, so it looked like it was trending in that direction. After halftime, the offense seemed to just come to a screeching halt, and they looked like that they were going to be cruising to like 50, 60 points, but they just couldn't get out of their own way in the second half. And as good as Johnson was in the first half, he had a pretty rough second half. He had multiple bad interceptions thrown. Some play calls from the coaching staff were questionable at best. He ended up having two interceptions. He should have had a third if it wasn't for a defensive penalty. And this dynamic Vegas offense only scored 10 points in the second half, and they just couldn't get anything going consistently. And towards the end of the game, Jerome Johnson was taken out due to an apparent injury. He took a massive hit on a I don't know if it was a roughing the passer penalty on that one or not, but he took a big hit and then he came back in for a play or two, but then was taken out later in the game, like with like a minute left, when all they needed was a first down to potentially seal the win. But they took him out and put in George Reyna, and it was just a weird sequence because it looked like you could see Johnson on the sideline mouthing the words, "I'm fine, I'm good," as it was happening, and that just the questionable play calling within that last minute as well. Just it was just a weird sequence for Vegas and to end the game, and ultimately how Vegas's season came to an end. And on the other side, this game showed why the Arizona Rattlers are one of the premier franchises in all of arena and indoor football, regardless of what league you're talking about. IFL, AFL, NAL, any of those things. The Rattlers are a premier franchise, and they have been for 20, 30 years at this point. And shows why they've had 14 straight seasons of 10 wins or more. They're a franchise that finds ways to win games, and they won this game in thrilling fashion. Rattlers quarterback Dalton Sneed, he didn't have a crazy game stat wise, but he made every play that they needed to be made late in the game to steal this victory away from Vegas, including a touchdown run on 4th and goal from the 2 with about 7 minutes to go, and then another touchdown run on 4th and goal from the 1 with no time left, running the exact same play each time. And it was just a thrilling way for the game to end, a walk-off touchdown to steal the victory. It was just a crazy sequence with the way Vegas seemed to fall apart and Arizona came clawing back and snatched victory from the claws of defeat, or from the jaws of defeat rather. But um, this Arizona Rattlers defense, this whole comeback doesn't happen without them. They tightened up in the second half and held this Vegas offense, which can be very dynamic, to only 10 points in the second half, which was really impressive, and multiple turnovers. DBs, Jermaine Dubes and Devontae Merriweather each had a pick. And like I said, Arizona probably should have had another one, but there was a legal defense called a little bit earlier. So they were making Jerome Johnson uncomfortable and throwing some questionable passes, and they were able to get some stops and flip the momentum of the game multiple times in this one. So Arizona didn't play their best game on offense. They didn't have any numbers that were jumping off the stat sheet by any means, but they found a way to win. And fun fact about this game for the Arizona Rattlers was this win for the Rattlers was also Coach Kevin Guy's 262nd win as a coach in arena and indoor football, which is the most all time in arena and indoor football. So big congratulations to Coach Guy and the Rattlers for that, and just again showing the model of consistency that the Arizona Rattlers are on a year in and year out basis. And I'm sure they're looking ahead to potentially get win number 263 next week in the conference championship. And the last game we're going to talk about is the San Diego Strike Force at the Bay Area Panthers. And San Diego won the fifth installment of the Cali Clash by a score of 49-40. And this game was absolutely marred by technical difficulties. The first half was just a tough watch, which was a shame because the teams were going back and forth. So from what you could see visually, it was an entertaining game, but it was just hard to enjoy it as a fan, knowing what the standard was for Bay Area broadcasts and San Diego broadcasts throughout the season. But um, it was looking like we were going to get another classic Cali clash, which we've already had three instant classics so far this season. But starting with Bay Area, they came out with a very interesting approach on offense that was pretty unorthodox for the indoor game. Bay Area seemed to be very content with exclusively running the ball for a long time, and they did so with a heavy formation, meaning bringing in an offensive lineman as like an up back fullback and just running the ball with Daquan Neal and running the ball with Shane Simpson right at the middle. And it was working. They were averaging 6 yards a carry all throughout this game. And it was like a when they zig, they zag type of approach because San Diego's defense has been unbelievable in the secondary. They have going into this game, they had 26 interceptions on the year. So I'm guessing the Bay Area's thought was, all right, well, we're not going to throw into their strength. Let's double up on our strength. Let's run the damn ball and let's see if we can win that way. And it was working for a lot of the first half, but what they needed was some balance in the passing game, at least a little bit, because it's not like Army Navy where you can just run the ball the entire time. You need some type of passing element to be successful and to beat a team like San Diego, and they just didn't get that. And it's shocking because they have former IFL MVP Daquan Neal at quarterback for them. So passing, Bay Area ended up going 2 for 8 for 29 yards, one touchdown, and two interceptions. That's just bad. Just it's not a good look from an offense that is being led by a former IFL MVP. It's just not. They couldn't get the ball to their best big play receiver in JT Stokes, and they just couldn't really get into any type of rhythm in the passing game. Again, they only completed two passes. It's hard to say. Is it because they couldn't get things going because they were just out of rhythm, or was San Diego secondary really disrupting that? And it's a little bit of both, but it might be a little bit more of the San Diego defense really coming to play. And I feel like it was a gamble focusing on the running game so much and literally being run heavy with the heavy formation, but it was working for a while. And I feel like if they just committed a little bit further to that, they could have potentially um, they could have potentially ended. But again, hindsight's 2020. There's who knows what would have happened. Like, yeah, if they just didn't throw interceptions, they would have been fine. Yeah, of course. But um, they just couldn't execute passing the ball when they needed that type of balance, and it came back to bite them. But San Diego, on the other hand, they stayed true to their offensive identity, and they had arguably their most complete game on offense, defense, and special teams in this one. Quarterback Nate Davis, he only went 15 for 32 passing, but he tallied 216 yards and six touchdowns. But the most important stat of all for the San Diego team was zero interceptions. Nate Davis has a tendency to cowboy it a little bit and trust his arm a little too much at times, and he'll throw the ball into some sticky situations. But he took care of the ball in this game. He didn't put him or his receivers or his team in any bad spots throwing the ball. And there were times where there was nothing there. At certain points of the season, he maybe would have tried to force something in, but he would throw the ball away, which contributed to his completion percentage being a little bit on the lower end. But kept a clean slate, protected the football for just enough, and the Strike Force got their first playoff win in franchise history. So big congratulations to the San Diego Strike Force team and that whole organization for not only making it to the playoffs but dethroning the defending champions to get that first win. It doesn't get much bigger than that. Arthur Jackson III, he caught four of those touchdowns from Davis, and five different San Diego receivers had multiple receptions in this one. So you look at Bay Area, they only completed two passes. San Diego had five different players catch at least two passes in this one. So they had a lot of balance, and they were keeping the Bay Area defense on tilt a little bit. And again, talking about this San Diego defense, they added two more interceptions to their total. So Keyshawn Walker and Elijah Bell snagged the two interceptions for the defense and pushed their total on the year to 28. 28, 26 in the regular season, and then two in this first playoff game. That's a 300% improvement from their 2023 total. They had eight all of last year's, and they have 28 so far this year. It's just it is unbelievable the turnaround that this the defense for the San Diego Strike Force has done this year. And I think if you're looking at potential assistant coach of the year awards, you got to look at the coaching staff for the San Diego Strike Force on defense and the unbelievable job that they've done turning around that team from last year from arguably the worst in the league to one of the best and most opportunistic. But this year, San Diego has that championship caliber defense. The old saying, defense wins championships. It's what won Bay Area. Their championship last season was great defense. San Diego is starting to click on defense and being really opportunistic with creating turnovers and getting some stops. And looking to continue this great run. They're gonna face another team that is very opportunistic in the Arizona Rattlers next week in the conference championship, but it's gonna be a great game, and I'm super excited for it. That was the first round of the playoffs. Some great games. I wish we could have enjoyed it visually a little bit more, but here's the hoping next week will be a little bit better. There's only 3 games left in the season. We've got the 2 conference championship games and then the IFL National Championship. So next week, we've got the conference championships. The first game is going to be on Friday night. It's going to be the Massachusetts Pirates at the Green Bay Blizzard. This is a very, very intriguing matchup to me. You look at Green Bay's offense is able to put up points in bunches when they're clicking. Their defense plays unbelievable, number one defense in a lot of categories, but rushing defense is not one of them. And you look at Massachusetts, they have the best running back in the league in Jimmy Robinson, and they're not afraid to feed him the ball consistently every single game. Last week alone, versus Frisco, he had 18 carries for 94 yards. And the last time these teams played, this game was in Massachusetts, but Jimmy Robinson had 15 carries for 80 yards and a touchdown. So that he was averaging 5 yards a carry. So I think Massachusetts has a lot better shot in this game than people may realize. Strictly due to the running game and what Jimmy Robinson brings to the table. So Green Bay is going to have to really focus in on Jimmy Robinson and stopping him if they want to punch their ticket to the IFL National Championship. But I think that's the key for this one is looking at how Jimmy Robinson performs against this Green Bay rushing defense. I think it's going to be a great game. I would not be surprised to see Massachusetts upset Green Bay in this one, strictly because of what we talked about with Jimmy Robinson. But it's going to be a great game. The atmosphere at the Resch Center is going to be rocking, and I'm very excited to see it. Last week, Green Bay got their first playoff win in 4,400, I think it was 16 days. So over 10 years. I think, geez, that's like 12, maybe close to 13 years since their last playoff win. So very, very much deserved for that fan base that supports that team and that entire community that supports the Blizzard. So very excited for them to get another home playoff game in what arguably is the most important game in Green Bay Blizzard history. Line wise, I would expect this game probably to have a line in the low 80s, maybe like an 82.5, 83.5, just because it's going to be a very physical game. And I would not be surprised to see Massachusetts cover whatever spread that gets thrown out there. But I'd probably see Green Bay looking at a 5.5, 6.5 point favorite. Any more than that, I think is a little much, and I would lean towards taking Massachusetts. But Massachusetts has a strong chance of upsetting Green Bay in this one if they play like they did last week against Frisco. But Green Bay's defense has been unbelievable all year, and would not be surprised to see them get multiple stops against Alejandro Benefield and his Pirates offense either. And in the Western Conference Championship, we have Monday Night Football. So Saturday and Sunday, the Desert Diamond Arena that the Arizona Rattlers play at was booked for a Hot Wheels monster truck show. I wish I was making that up. That's a very real thing. But they're going to be playing on Monday night, which is a kind of cool aesthetic, kind of cool opportunity for the IFL to get some Monday Night Football before the real Monday Night Football in the NFL kicks off in a month or two. But this is going to be a very fun game. And San Diego has been a team that I've enjoyed watching and have been very fond of since early in the season. All their games are exciting to watch. And when you look at Arizona and how they played last week, they find ways to win and they're very opportunistic. Dalton Sneed, he's a championship quarterback from last year, led Bay Area to that national championship, and he knows what it takes to get there. And so the combination of him and Shannon Brooks are going to be a combo that San Diego has to focus in on, similar to what we were talking about with the Green Bay game, where last week, San Diego gave up 6 yards a carry on the ground, be it that was against a heavy formation with Bay Area. I don't think Arizona is going to give them very many heavy formation looks in this one, but San Diego is going to have to be opportunistic with their secondary to force some mistakes out of Dalton Sneed. Last season in 2023, Dalton Sneed only threw 2 or 3 interceptions all year. This season, he had a lot more because Arizona was in some shootouts a lot more than he was with Bay Area last year. So I think the opportunity to take away some possessions is there, but this game is ultimately going to depend on how well Nate Davis can take care of the football. We've seen him be able to throw for 200 plus, 5 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns. He threw for 9 touchdowns earlier in the year. I don't think he's going to throw for 9 in this one, but the big number is going to be the number of interceptions and the number of turnovers that San Diego has. So if San Diego can play a clean game, I think they can very easily win this game and punch their ticket to the national championship in Vegas. But Arizona is going to be a feisty team, and I would expect Arizona to be favored in this one just because they are the home team. But it's not going to be by much. It's maybe going to be by 3, 4 points, if that. This is a very, very interesting matchup. I would expect the over and under to probably be like a 93.5, 92.5, somewhere in that range. But this is going to be a great game in terms of predictions for each conference championship and who I think we'll see in the national championship. My original picks of Frisco and Bay Area got eliminated in the first round. So you might want to fade me on this. I don't know, but I feel like we're going to get San Diego and Green Bay in the national championship. Green Bay has just been playing unbelievable defense all year, and Max Mailer has been doing a really fantastic job of being a great game manager, and that's I know game manager gets thrown around as a derogatory term with quarterbacks, but he's been a great game manager. But then he has those moments where he's a game changer as well, where he can turn it on. So I think they'll need that type of performance against Massachusetts in order to get there. But I've been a big believer in this San Diego team, and I think this San Diego offense is going to have a very big day against Arizona. And they played at Arizona earlier this year, and San Diego was able to put up 55, I believe it was, and walk away with a win. So I think we're going to see something very similar with San Diego punching their ticket to the national championship as well. So couple of really exciting games with some really good storylines attached to it that I'm super excited to sit down and watch. One on Friday night and one on Monday night. So that's a preview of the IFL Conference Championships we've got ahead of us next weekend. The indoor and arena season is slowly coming to an end, only 3 games left. So make sure you take some time to enjoy it while you can. Hopefully, the streams will be better this weekend. Can't be worse. Well, I guess they could, but we're not going to talk about that. Up next, we've got Billings Outlaws running back Hunter Swoboda. He took some time out of his day to talk about ArenaBowl XXXIII, this year's Billings Outlaws team, his experience with arena football, his football journey, and so much more. So loved having a conversation with Hunter and looking forward to seeing what's next for Mr. Swoboda, both on the field and off the field. Here's Hunter. All right, joining us on the show today, we've got an ArenaBowl champion running back for the Billings Outlaws. It is Hunter Swoboda. Hunter, thank you so much for joining the show. How are we doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Trey. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I see you're rocking the Billings sweatshirt, rocking the
Yes,
ArenaBowl hat.
sir.
How's it feel? How's it feel being the ArenaBowl XXXIII champion?
I think it's finally starting to sink in. It's been a little over a week now, and I think we're all finally like, oh wow, like we really did win the game. Like
Yeah, right.
we went to New Jersey, we played in the American Dream. I mean, we were gladiators in the arena. We came out on top. So I think all of us were a little bit in shock initially, and so it's definitely starting to sink in. It's pretty awesome.
That's great. How was your travel back to Montana? I saw some of your teammates had some issues getting back. Were you caught up in that?
A little bit, yes. We had a group of guys that were due to traffic and a bunch of other stuff, weren't able to make a flight. We had a group that ended up getting stuck in Minneapolis because of everything that was happening with the different
Oh,
airlines. And so we had one group make it back when they were supposed to, on Saturday night after the game. We had my group made it back on Monday night, and then the next
Oh,
group made it back on Tuesday. So it took us a
geez.
while to make it all the way back to Billings for sure.
Yeah, you didn't quite have the homecoming that you dream of after winning a
Not
championship, but you
necessarily,
made it
not
back.
necessarily. Yes, sir.
Well, for starters, tell us about your football journey and how you got involved with the AFL.
Yeah, so I went to Washita Baptist University. Shout out to the Tigers. They are, of course, in my opinion, the greatest program in Division II football.
Oh
Uh,
yes.
Perennial top five powerhouse while I was there. Three conference championships, love those guys. So I was blessed to play for a lot of really great dudes there: Brett Shockley, Todd Knight, and Julio Pruitt. When I graduated, I finished in December of 22. I was in the 23 draft class. Ended up going undrafted, trained with a guy named Chip Smith in Atlanta, Georgia. And thankfully, he got me really prepared, really ready, had a good pro day, and was able to get on with the Atlanta Falcons for minicamp in 2023.
Hmm.
So I ended up getting cuts. They brought me in to play fullback and tight end, played really well. And you know how it is. Sometimes you're just there for a cup of coffee. The
Right.
numbers just don't really work out. You get cut. So came home and ended up working as a financial advisor and just training and coaching on the side at my little brother's junior high school for that fall. When it came around to spring, the USFL and XFL ended up combining. So I was unable to find a spot on a team to be able to
Yeah.
go play spring football. And March ended up rolling around, and I was just kind of sitting here going, what am I supposed to do? Ended up signing with the Gridiron Crew. They're an agency, pretty new agency, and they do a really
Hmm.
great job representing us. And they were able to get me on with Coach Walker. They had a pre existing connection there, and they were looking for a guy who could play both ways back when we still had Ironman football in the AFL, RIP Ironman. And we, yeah, ended up in Billings with Coach Walker and Coach Bonner, and the rest is history. I'm very thankful for that opportunity. God was really gracious and good to allow that to happen, and it was a
Yeah.
relationship that ended up working out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, RIP Ironman football. You were that's how you first came on my radar early on this season. I was like,
Yes,
who's this
sir.
guy number 17? He's all over the place. I'm like,
Yes,
he's
sir.
jumping 10 feet in the air, swatting passes, running the ball, long snapping. Like he's doing it all. I'm like, this guy
Yes, sir.
rules. So
Yes,
the
sir.
fact that I'm
I
able
appreciate
to
that.
have this conversation with you, I'm like, all right, we've come full circle. Let's go.
Yeah, for sure. We've definitely come full circle since it's
Yeah.
all of that.
Yeah. What was your first exposure to indoor and arena football? Did you know about it growing up, or was it something that a little bit later on in life you kind of
So
learned
I had
about?
kind of known about it growing up. Of course, when I was a kid, you see games on whenever they were played on like ESPN2 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I think we all saw the Kurt Warner movie, right?
Hmm.
And so that was really my limited exposure to arena football. And I initially was kind of against it just because I didn't think it necessarily fit my skill set.
Right.
And after I signed with my new agency, I was really just looking for an opportunity to get film. So Coach Walker and Coach Bonner, I think they took a different approach than a lot of coaches take, especially when they were trying to set up for Ironman. They were looking for guys who were a little more unconventional and guys who had the athleticism to be able to play both ways. And
Hmm.
so thankfully I kind of fit that mold a little bit. I was able to come in, play some defensive end, play linebacker, play some receiver, play some running back, like you said, play some fullback, deep snap. And so that's how I initially got that opportunity. And thanks to Coach Bonner and his fantastic coaching, Coach Manaya, our offensive line coach, I was able to just kind of take advantage of the offensive role I was given. Right. And so I
Yeah.
got to work on a lot of things as far as touching football. I didn't get to catch the football or run with football as much in college. And so this is a really good opportunity to kind of fine tune those skills. And so again, it was just a kind of a match made in heaven as far as that was concerned.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a theme with people who come on the show is that they're trying to get that exposure in the outdoor game. And then at first they're like, I don't know if I want to go indoors. I don't know if I want to do arena. But like you said, you need the tape. You need to be able to show what you can do. And there are aspects of the arena and indoor game that translate really well to the outdoor
Right.
game if you put it
Right.
on film. You can't
100%.
you can't just not do anything, right? So
Right.
yeah, props to you for taking the chance and going out there and making it happen.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So from your perspective, what was the biggest on the field transition that you had to make going from outdoor to indoor?
I think the biggest transition on the field especially for offense, had to be just how we were pass protecting,
Hmm.
and then just getting used to taking handoffs and pitches. I'm used to running routes and catching footballs, so taking more of a running back approach is a little bit different. So it took a little bit to adjust to that. But once you do, it's a lot of fun because you have the football immediately and you
Yeah.
just get to start rolling and just go hit
Yeah.
people, move around, juke, do what you need to do to be able to get vertical. But pass pro is definitely different. It's different. Instead of having your hand in the ground like I did a lot in college and then just pass throwing a defensive end who's already, on your shoulder in a 9 technique or head up on you in a 6. Here in arena football, I'm coming from back directly behind the quarterback, fitting into an A gap, and then having to play off of a blitzing plug from about 3 or 4 yards deep, or
Hmm.
a defensive tackle immediately swimming into the A gap and then having to pass that off between the center. So it was
Yeah.
definitely a different experience, and I really enjoyed it because I feel like it helped fine tune my pass protection, which translates immediately to outdoor. And then, of course,
For
being able
sure.
to get the football quickly playing running back, it allows you to be able to see the game differently and to be able to just see holes and see angles a little bit differently, which, of course, I think is always going to translate to any level of football and any area of football, whether you're indoor or out.
Yeah, definitely. What was it like living and playing in Billings throughout the season? Anytime I hear someone talk about Montana, usually they say tremendous things about it. Was it like super cold
Right.
when you got there, or what was your experience like?
So yeah, the Big Sky State. I had never heard of Billings, Montana until I got there. I rolled up the second week of training camp, and shout out to my teammates who had been there for like 2 weeks before me. It was snowing in April, right? And
Oh God.
so we're practicing outdoors, we're practicing indoors, anywhere that we can get a field. And I mean, it's a beautiful state with awesome people. I cannot say enough great things about playing, not just for the organization and playing for Steve Titus and Walker and Bonner,
Right.
but playing for the people of Billings and like how they show up in the Metra and how they showed up for our teammates and stuff, going out and doing outreach in that community. I mean, those people are awesome. So yeah, it was definitely a change just with the weather and all that stuff. But yeah, no, it was awesome. It was a welcome change. They were awesome.
Yeah, I listened to the Outlaws podcast in season. I think it was when you guys went to Washington. I think you told the story about driving from Billings to Washington. You were
Oh
like, I
yeah.
had no idea this beautiful part of the country existed.
Yeah, no idea. I'm from little old Arkansas, and I didn't
Uh-huh.
realize that you could see as far as you can see when you're up in the Northwest like that. And so
Hmm.
driving over to Washington, going through Idaho, and seeing all of that stuff is just crazy. I mean, you can't look at that
Right.
and go, you know what? There's no God. Like I see that, and I'm just like, I'm really thankful that I serve a good God.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So you touched on it with playing Iron Man RIP. We'll see if it comes back next year. I don't think
Yes,
it will,
sir.
but we
Hey,
we
I
can
hope
hope.
it does. I hope it
We can
does.
hope.
It
I
changes the
love.
game and forces coaches to be better
Yes.
coaches.
Yes, 1000%. We're in lockstep there. But what was that
100%.
transition like from focusing on like one position in college to having to focus on, all right, I can't just be a tight end. I got to be a running back, a linebacker, a defensive end.
Right.
Like what was the mindset shift?
I think for me, it was more of a reverting back to how it used to be in high school. I played at a 4A
Hmm.
high school before I transferred to a higher classification my senior year, and so I was blessed to be able to play defense and offense at the same time.
Hmm.
During my time down in Little Rock, Arkansas, playing for Joe T. Robinson, and being able to come to Billings and play Ironman football was a lot of the same stuff. And in college, I played defense before I transitioned back to offense. So there's always been a little bit of that aspect. And it was exciting to be able to do that on a professional level because it wasn't one of those things where you just go out there and you just have to win just because you're athletic. Like we actually had to sit down and go, okay, like how do I pass rush? Like what's going to be
Hmm.
the thing that I really utilize and what is my counter to that? Right? Like, how do I need to play linebacker now? Because I'm older, I'm taller, I'm a little bit heavier, and I'm faster. So how does that
Right.
translate to how it was in high school? Right. And then going to offense and having to relearn how to pass pro and stuff like that. So it was an interesting change to the game. And I think it showed that our coaches did a good job of recruiting the right guys to be able,
Hmm.
because you have to have a certain mindset to be able to go, okay, I have to play multiple positions. I can't just focus on one position. I don't get
Yeah.
to just go to practice and say, okay, I'm just going to work on my hand striking in my pass pro, because halfway through practice, I've got to switch over and I've got to be able to dip and rip and try to get to the quarterback, or I've got to be
Right.
able to shed a block and go make a tackle. And so I think that you've got to be extremely mentally tough to be able to do that day in and day out.
Yeah, and you touched on it with the coaching staff. You could not have a better coaching staff than what you guys have
Could not.
in Billings this year with Coach Walker and Coach Bonner. I mean, two absolute legends of the arena football
Legends.
game. In the off season leading up to kickoff, I would throw on some old Rattlers games. I'm like, look at
Oh,
Bonner go. Like, look at him
dude,
go. He's just doing his thing out there, absolutely balling.
those guys are
Um,
studs.
yeah, and just yeah, I think that was ultimately the game changer for you guys as a team that
100%.
really put you guys so
100%.
far above
Yes,
is
sir.
that you had people that not only understood the game, they were the best at their position in the
100%.
AFL for years and years. So having that experience was just awesome. Do you ever watch some Coach Walker's film and be like, "Hey, Coach, I see
Oh,
what you're
yeah.
doing out there"?
100%. We definitely, especially because our team's so young, right? I mean, shout out to all the dudes who played for Billings this year. Like,
Right.
we just had guys who were 24, 23, like me. We had a couple of dudes who were 26, 27. I mean, the oldest guy we have is Danny Southwick, right? 42 years old, been playing indoor football since we were born, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
but we were all so young. I don't think we fully understood like who Walker and Bonner were. So
Right.
about halfway through training camp, all of us are like, y'all keep referencing the fact that you played. Like, were y'all like really that good? And all of us start eventually watching the YouTube videos and like seeing the
Yep.
'97 team win the Arena Bowl, and we're like, oh my gosh, okay, like it
Yeah.
wasn't Kurt Warner that was the best arena football quarterback. It was
No.
Sed Bonner that was the best arena
Yeah.
football quarterback.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, with his injury, he didn't necessarily get some of those later opportunities to play outdoor football. But I mean, man, like
Yeah.
watching Coach Walker come down and just lay the wood on dudes and seeing
Right.
him cover guys. And the great thing is they everything they did when they played, they teach us and then can show us that, hey, this actually works because I did it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's not like, oh, hey, it's not one of those things where our guys are like, oh, I know better. It's like I actually don't know better because you've proven that what you do
Yeah.
works. So we definitely had
Yeah.
buy-in on.
Yeah, I that was another reason why I enjoyed watching your team because the Outlaws reminded me of an old 90s AFL team, just the way you guys operated. And again, it makes sense with Walker and Bonner at the helm. It's like, yeah, no doubt. Of course. Like I'm in
100%.
the off season, I'm gonna run some film back. I'm like, I feel like Bonner snuck in some old Rattlers plays
Oh my
into the
gosh,
offense here.
yes, no
Yeah,
doubt.
I
And with
know
the
he snuck
quarterback
some in
we had
there.
in Isaac Harker, like Bonner could run whatever he needed to run because Isaac is
Right.
so mentally fit and able to just do whatever you need as far as quarterbacks are concerned. That like it just opens up the playbook when you have a quarterback like that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, the league dealt with some issues throughout the season. Didn't get off to the best start that we could have hoped for. But it seemed like Billings was rock solid and steady throughout it all. Tell me about going through the season with this team and how things were from your perspective, all things considered.
We were, I mean, I can't say enough good things. We were blessed to have Steve Titus as our owner. He's one of those
Hmm.
guys. Him and Walker worked really well together from our end, and they made sure that we were taken care of. Not necessarily in the sense of like, hey, we want you to come to Billings and we have X amount of money. We're gonna do this, 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 and this. They held up their end of the market exactly the way that they were supposed to. We signed contracts with the AFL. They held up exactly what they were supposed to. They took care of us. They housed us. They fed us. And when stuff was crazy happening, they met with us and they said, "Hey, this is what's happening. You know, this week, this is what we're going to have to do. This is who we're playing." And Coach Walker's mentality is always go 1-0 every week. That's all
Right.
we got to do. Just go 1-0 every week. Don't worry about what's going to happen next week. Don't worry what's going to happen the Sunday after the game. I just need you to worry about what's going to happen today at practice and go 1-0 this Saturday. And that's
Hmm.
the approach we took to our entire season. And it as we kept going, you're able to kind of see our team, the camaraderie we had, the brotherhood we had, those guys. I mean, you're never going to see that those dudes in that situation coming together like that ever again. And it was
Right.
just awesome to be able to be a part of something like that because we were able to feed off of each other when stuff wasn't necessarily going our way. And that helped in games where things were super tight and things weren't necessarily going our way initially. And
Hmm.
so we play Albany, right? We're down, what was it, 11 with a minute and a half left. You drive the
Right.
whole length of the field, and every guy on our offense, I mean, before we even snap the ball, Park comes into the huddle, and we look at each other, and we all just go, okay, got to go score. Got to get to 4 point. But first, we got to
Yeah.
score. We go down,
Yeah.
score, we get to 4 point, and we knew for a fact Bailey was going to hit the deuce. Then you come back, you got to play Nashville again. And it's like, okay, what are we going to do? Well, it's tied up. We've got 30 seconds left. We got to get in field
Right.
goal range. We get in field goal range. We know Bailey's going to hit the field goal. We get to the ArenaBowl. I mean, it's crazy when you look back and see everything that happened this season prepared us for every situation that was going to happen. And that's whether it's due to God, whether it's due to the fact that Steve Titus was a rock solid owner who made sure
Right.
that we weren't questioning what was going to happen, whether that's Walker and his preparation every week or Bonner and his preparation every week. All of that melded together to create the team and the product that you saw this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it really was a generational moment in terms of like this group is going through something that is unheard of in terms of everything going on around the league. So the way that you guys
Right.
were able to really bond over that and come together, it really showed towards the end there. When you look back on the season, was there a specific moment where everything clicked and it was like, oh, this we got something special here?
For us as a team, I think it was how we responded to the Nashville game the first time around
Hmm.
because we had played some teams and we had done what we were supposed to do. We had played well. We'd executed game plans. We hadn't necessarily played a complete game, but we were winning, right? And
Right.
in the words of every football player and every football coach that's ever existed, winning fixes everything. And
Yeah.
so there's
Yeah.
certain things that you could sweep under the rug when you win. And when you lose, those things, the one of two things happen. Those things either come to light and you face them as a group and you fix those things and you get better, or you make excuses and you say, well, it's not really our fault. It's somebody else's fault. It's the referees. We didn't have,
Right.
you stop trusting coach. Coach didn't have a good game plan, or the ball just didn't bounce our way. You start to bring these excuses into it, and all of a sudden you don't have to fix the problems because it's not really your fault. And then you
Yeah.
just move
Yeah.
on and you hope that's enough, right? And so when we played Nashville, a lot any issues that we had or that had been swept on the rug just by winning, right? That naturally happens. We Those things were brought to light, and to Coach Walker and Coach Bonner's credit again, they were the first ones to take the blame for what had transpired in that game and what had happened. And that
Yeah.
helped us be able to go, okay, well, if Coach Walker's going to take responsibility and if Coach Bonner's going to take responsibility, well, then I can take responsibility because I missed this block or I didn't execute to my fullest extent here. And
Yeah.
that trickle down effect for our entire team, I think helped us get to a place where we could really hold each other accountable. And so for the rest of the year, it wasn't an individual this and individual that. It was how can we as a team beat the next team? How can we as a team accomplish what we're trying to do?
Yeah, and yeah, speaking on that accountability, it really has to come from within to be effective. Like you can only do so much to say to your teammate, "Hey man, we got to make sure we're doing this." It's got to be cell
Right.
phone. So the fact that everyone was kind of able to pull themselves up and be like, "All right, I need to do better with this. I need to do better with that." It just means you guys got better as the season went on, and you definitely did.
100%. And that started with guys who unfortunately were unable to finish the year with us just because they got hurt. Guys like Kronstein, a stud receiver, gets hurt in the Nashville
Yeah.
game. His leadership role changed after that, and he dove into that with us and figured out how can he lead without necessarily being on the field. Guys like Cito, Omar Hippil Toledo, right? One of our really good corners.
Yeah.
He gets hurt. He gets hurt when we're playing Salina, and he had to figure out different ways to help and be with our team, right? Guys like John David Whiteside, nose tackle, who's an absolute stud, ends up getting hurt, and it's just a testament to those guys and testament to our team because they stuck with it no matter what. They were 100% bought in. Every person that was
Yeah.
a part of our organization was 100% bought in. Even the guys that weren't able to play, and it broke all of our hearts that those dudes weren't able to be in New Jersey with us or anything like that. But that's kind of the example they set. Like if even though I, the individual, am not able to be out there with you, like we, the
Hmm.
team, are going to find a way to get it done together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's the scary thing about this Arena Bowl victory is that you guys weren't necessarily at full strength like you were earlier in the year. So
Yeah.
and it just makes you think like, man, this team was even better
Yep.
than that. So it's
Yes,
it's
sir.
it's crazy to think about. But let's talk about the Arena Bowl. So Arena Bowl 33, aka the brawl at the mall, as some folks were calling it.
That's what I've heard it's
Um,
been called. I kind of like that.
yeah, I know. I was like, look, AFL, this one's for free. This one's on the house. Come on, go
100%.
take
Was
it.
that you? Did you come up with that? I think, is that right?
I don't know if I was the original. I threw it out there and I saw some people take it. I'm like, look, that one's on the house, AFL. Take
Hey,
it.
look,
Just
we'll put
let
it
me get
down.
a
We'll put
t-shirt
it
with it
down
right
right
there.
now. Okay.
Yeah.
Trey from off the wall, 100%. He is the one who needs to get the credit for Brawl of the Mall.
Noted. Noted. Clip it. Let's go.
Yes, sir.
Well, you mentioned it was like the being the gladiators in the arena. From a player's perspective, it's a unique spot to be in, right? You're playing in a mall. What were your first thoughts when it was first announced versus when you started like playing, warming up, and getting out there? Like, what were your thoughts as a whole?
Yeah, I think that we originally thought they would do kind of like that old style AFL where it was either going to be held at the top seed's home arena or
Hmm.
it was going to be at like a neutral site AFL field. And so
Right.
when they announced the New Jersey thing, I think we just kind of were like, okay, that's an interesting choice all the way over there in New Jersey,
Right.
suspiciously close to some people and
Interesting.
suspiciously far from other people. But
Interesting.
for
Yeah.
us, it was just one of those things where it's like, okay, from a marketing standpoint, they probably are trying to they're trying to be able to promote it in a certain way. And so
Right.
once we knew where it was going to be, it wasn't a huge thing for us. Where it's like, man, why do we have to go all the way over there? It's just okay. That's where the game's going to be played. Get to the
Yeah.
game, go play the game. And then when we got out there, the field was a little bit different. I think they used Nashville has two fields, so they used Nashville's
Hmm.
second field, which didn't have
Okay.
any markings on it or any cat stuff on it. And I think it may be the end zones. Yeah, I don't know if it was the field. I think it was just the end zones. They had two sets of end zones. Nashville did, so we got
Hmm.
Nashville's end zones and Nashville's regular field. And I mean, it was great. It was good. They had the walls were set up great. Everything was good. I think the only thing they had to change was they cut the rebound nets down
Yeah.
because of how the arena was set up and how bold it was. There's no
Yeah.
room on the sides for the nets to go out over like they normally do, which
Uh,
doesn't change much for us. Just changes a little bit for the kickers, so you can't miss super wide. Which
yeah.
for
Yeah.
Bailey the boot Giffen, that's not
No,
necessarily going to be a problem at all.
not a problem.
So
Shrink
yeah,
them even more. Shrink them even
right.
more.
Like, come on, just give me a smaller target, right? Aim small, miss small.
Right?
But
Yeah.
no, yeah, once we knew where it wasn't anything where we were going to complain about it. We knew where the game had to be played, so we knew where the game had to be won.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it was definitely the reaction online. I felt like it was a lot of positive, and then there were some people like, oh my gosh, what are we doing here? But overall, all things considered, with how the league started, this was a great ending. It got a lot
100%.
of good exposure for the
Yes, it
league,
did.
and I think put them
Yeah.
off to as good of an ending as we could possibly hope for.
Right.
If you would have told us
Yeah.
that this was the ending seven
Right.
weeks ago, oh, we would have dreamed,
Yeah. I don't think
pun
anybody would have
intended,
believed
dreamed
you
of that.
at
Yeah.
all. I don't think anybody would have believed you. But no, I
Yeah.
thought the CBS broadcast looked great. I finally went back and watched it. Right.
Hmm.
That's the story of the end of the year, right? You finish the game and
Yeah.
you don't actually end up watching the film until a week later. But no, yeah, I thought the CBS broadcast looked great, and then we enjoyed playing on the field. I didn't realize the lighting was the way it was until I went back and
Yeah.
saw the game. When you're on the field, it wasn't anything crazy or anything like that. So
Yeah. In the beginning, it was weird. It was like I'm watching arena football with natural sunlight glistening on the field. Like,
100%.
what is happening? And then towards the end, it was like, okay, here's some artificial lights. Like, this is looking
Yes.
a little more
Yes,
familiar.
for sure.
Well, what's next? What's next for Hunter Swoboda? What's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm back in Bentonville, Arkansas. Uh, I'm going to end up working as a teacher and a coach this fall. I'm going to end up
Nice.
teaching history. I'm going to be the defensive coordinator at Grimsley Junior High as a feeder into Bentonville West. I've got all my film together. I'm looking for an opportunity to be able to play tight end or fullback in the spring league in the UFL, and I'd love
Yeah.
to be able to use that to be able to potentially get back to the NFL. So,
Awesome. Well,
oh,
I'm
and I can't leave without saying I am getting married in November. My fiance would be mad at me if I didn't say I'm 100%. I'm getting married in November, so that's exciting.
Let's go.
Yeah,
Congratulations. That's huge.
yeah,
That's huge. That's awesome. Well, I love what you bring to the table. I love your game. You're a great guy. I've loved this conversation. I know you're just getting started. I'm super excited to see where you go from here. Where can people follow along on your journey?
yeah. So I've got Instagram. It's just at Hunter Swoboda, and then I've got Twitter, and that's just at Hunter Swoboda as well. And then after that, I think that's it. I think I've got Instagram and Twitter, and so that's kind of where people can follow along. I've always got my highlights and stuff in my Twitter bio and all that jazz. And then
Yeah.
I'll end up posting about the ArenaBowl on Instagram and all that stuff eventually.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for joining the show today. You got any parting words for the people out there before we wrap this up?
If you haven't watched AFL football, you're going to have to watch it now because the Billings Outlaws, we got it done. And I love every single one of those dudes that played with us. I wish I could mention all of you by name. We'll be forever in each other's hearts. That's the bond that you never break. And
Yeah.
no matter what anybody was going to throw at us, we were going to get it done. No excuses, no limits. So Billings Outlaws were number one for 2024 ArenaBowl 33 champions. I was blessed to be a part of it.
Let's go. Thank you so much, Hunter.
Thanks, Trey.
And that's the show. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to watch this, to listen to this, whatever it is. If you're watching us on YouTube, please be sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, go ahead and like the episode. Go rate the podcast page itself and share it with some friends. You know, the indoor and arena football season is coming to an end, but we can always start recruiting for the cult of arena and indoor football for next season. Never too early to start recruiting. So if you don't already, please give us a follow on all the socials at Off the Wall FB, F as in foot, B as in ball. We're on Instagram, X/Twitter, and TikTok as well. So really appreciate the support all season. And there's 24 hours in a day. The fact that you choose to spend an hour of that listening to me ramble about arena and indoor football is pretty cool, and I appreciate the support again. So IFL conference championships are this weekend. Let's enjoy the few games of indoor football that we have left, and we'll see if my predictions hold true. We'll see if you need to continue to fade me moving forward. It's going to be one or the other, folks. So enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy this weekend of IFL action. We'll see you next time. Bye.